turn it over to Kevin Miranda from Nixon, who's going to be our first presenter this morning. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you, guys. Scott, Tamara, for putting this on. I think it's important for a fragmented industry to get together and really talk and present new ideas and present new just ways of doing things. I think is always important, and to continue to push the industry forward. That's the goal, I think, for everyone, especially for us. So I'm just going to share my screen and get right into it. Please feel free to ask any questions. I'm going to gloss over a ton to really get to what the system does, and from there, feel free to contact me any way you guys so choose. So instead of going through the entire statistical analysis of what we've built over the past 3 years, I know a lot of our Carnegie Mellon partners won't be pleased, but I don't want to bore you guys. I think that it's just important to get right to the nuts and bolts of the system itself, what the system does, and kind of why we built it. So the safety industry itself is completely outcome bias, right? And when I say that, I mean, when we have a suboptimal outcome, that's immediately when we say, well, there's a flaw. But did that flaw exist before? You know, it's always the question that everyone asks. It's like, well, did it exist prior and we just didn't know about it? We didn't see it. We didn't measure it. We didn't understand it. We didn't put the correct values to it. And I think that was the premise of Nixon and why we created it. And like I said, I'm just going to gloss over, and as questions come up, please feel free to ask. But this right here is just your incident and injury summary of a real loss on site, OSHA recordable without lost time. On February the 9th, 2017, somewhere in and around the shale oil and gas industry, due to just proprietary information, we try to keep it limited. But the guy was using an angle grinder, removing material from said skillet. That angle grinder kicked back. For all of our non-construction people, I apologize that I don't also have a general industry incident on hand, but please know that the system kind of tailors itself to who you are and what you do, and more importantly, what your employees do. So we'll kind of go through this, and I'll be diving back and forth. But Nixon, our system, laid out a little bit differently, does things a little bit differently, and I hope that by the end of this presentation, you guys can at least see why. So when an incident occurs, the first thing to do is an incident investigation. And for us, a lot of our insurance partners right now, there's numerous that I could name, but what we end up doing is taking incidents and putting them through our risk lab. And so what this basically looks like is saying, okay, well, what were the actions, or what was the person doing? So the person was removing material with an angle grinder. These scores up here is just a risk scale. So instead of a 5x5 scale, we have 1 to 99, backed by boatloads of data. Again, if you guys want to ask questions, concerns, anything like that, please feel free to reach out to me off to the side. I could spend a lot of time on the data side and all the statistics you wanted to learn about. But for this presentation, I just kind of want to go through what the person was doing and how this incident investigation kind of lays itself out within the system. So they were removing material with an angle grinder, and they were working from scaffold. So right there, we get the risk scale to populate. So this is in real time. This is on a computer. This is on an iPad, an iPhone, wherever you may be. And what we're really trying to understand is, well, what was the risk and what was this event scenario? You know, what led to? So all on the right-hand side here, you'll see present risks. So these are risks that are always going to be related back to the actions that we've selected. On the left are going to be ones that could be there or could not be there based off of environments, conditions, or interactions with said hazards. I think what's unique about Nixon is we try to root everything in what people do rather than the hazard they are around. If we can root it in what they do, then we can better understand how they interact with said hazard. And I think that that's really, really important for people to grasp and people to understand. We're teaching this next year at about 27 different colleges, universities in and around the United States. also in Canada. And I think that the one big thing that we're trying to drive towards is better data and safety and what that data actually does for you. I think that there is a ton of data right now in the safety space. I think that 99.9% of it does not become business intelligence for safety professionals, safety directors, COOs, CFOs, CEOs. It becomes absence of failures, and that's how you're judged. And usually that's why the safety industry has such a high turnover rate, because we're judged off of those outcomes. So for this incident that we just talked about, we are going to select ICE, working from scaffold. It was the only other risk that was there outside of the ones that were present. So these present risks are what's making up this score. And from there, we save it, and we're able to put the mitigators that were in place. So they did contact a competent person. They were not working. They didn't not work from scaffold with ICE. They did have a fire extinguisher. The housekeeping was not in place. The tool was inspected. The scaffold was inspected. There was machine guarding. The material was not secured, so it was just that skillet. And if I go back to the picture, they actually reenacted it for us to show that there was no secure of the material. They were wearing proper PPE. The body position was not correct, however, so we'll leave that off. They did shield and remove combustible materials. They did have competent scaffolds. And this is going to go on for a while here, of just different mitigators having to do with shielding combustible materials on live processing facilities where sparks are directed. Was the employee trained? The employee did have two-hand operation and did utilize the handle. We can see that from the reenacted picture, and they actually took a picture of the grinder itself, which are obviously two things that we always think about when looking at that. So now we have all of our mitigators in place. So the risk went down by 3 points on our scale, which you're probably looking at me saying, Kevin, I really don't care. What the hell does that do for me? And for us, I think that this is kind of where the magic begins for us, and where all the statistical models and the years of putting in data and implementing data have really paid off for us. So Nixon builds out an arm tree, which is basically your actions, your risks, and your mitigators. And now we can start to see relationships. And we can also start to measure, what is the probability of this incident? Because is it systemic or is it an outlier, right? So is this event scenario happening all the time? Do we never identify proper body position? Do we always wear PPE, always use a handle, and always have two-hand operation? But is that enough, right? And you have to ask yourself these questions over and over again, and really start to dive into the granular data that matters. So we have our two actions listed here. I can click them, and now all of my risks are going to kind of cascade out. So working from scaffold, I'm going to have my risks here. We're going to be able to go over them. And then I'm going to be able to see, like, what are we doing? So for fire extinguishers, removing combustible materials, shielding combustible materials. For flying debris, all the different things. For kickbacks, all the different things. For tool failure, all the different things. This is a way right now, we are training at around 32 locals around the United States. And this is one of the biggest things that we use to accompany OSHA 10s, OSHA 30s, things like that, is really getting people to understand what they're going to face, because an apprentice just out of whatever hall may have never held an angle grinder, let alone what that angle grinder does, what the risk profile of it is, and how all these different pieces can affect it. So we constantly kind of take people through this risk analysis, loss analysis, trying to understand, well, what was the event scenario? And is this something that, if we keep doing it this way, will continue to cause suboptimal outcomes? For a lot of people with some experience in the construction field, if you don't have proper body position and you don't have material secured, I'm sure you have all seen people do that and get away with it, over and over and over again. But does that make it correct, or is there a flaw in there? And that's what we're really trying to find, is keeping a laser focus on a process rather than a laser focus on an outcome. And if we can do that, we can better explain when things do go right or when things do go wrong. I think that we constantly talk about this thought process of a winning mindset and a winning person. And a winning person, if they can tell you how they win, you know, whatever it may be, professional or anything else, how they win, what's that process look like? They can replicate it and scale it. But the ones that can't, you kind of just have to say, well, it's probably luck, you know. And for us, that's how we kind of look at things, is looking at, well, what's luck? What can we extrapolate out from a sense in terms of the data? And then what can we really do with it to move forward? You know, I think that that's the biggest thing for us, is constantly creating leading indicators for people to better understand where they exist today, instead of letting outcomes tell them where they exist today. You know, because I think that there's too many sacrificial lambs that have to be in place for initiative to get created. And what we want to do is really say, if we focus on the process, we should always have initiatives. We should always be creating new initiatives. It shouldn't take someone getting their finger cut to then create the initiative. It should be beforehand. You know, so from this incident probability, we start to run expected value probabilities and expected all kinds of different returns on those investments of engineering controls, PPE, all kinds of different things, for Fortune 100, Fortune 500, all the way down to mom and pop excavators and little sawmills across the country. And our whole goal is, I guess at the end of the day, and to not sound cheesy, but to democratize safety. I don't think that it really needs to be an industry secret. And I think that everyone should know this stuff. So when you get Nixon, you get the entire database. And that includes the Bechtels, the Floors, the BPs, the Marathons, the, you know, the Fords, the GMs, the whomevers. It includes all of those, you know, and we've gone to multiple insurance carriers and brokers, some of the biggest in the world, and they've looked at us and said, how did you get this data set? How do you have this? Because no one else across any industry does. And I think for us, it's just been, we really wanted to understand safety at a different lens, and understand it at what people do and how they do it, rather than what hazards are they interacting with. I think that if you skip that part, you get to the OSHA top 10 or Liberty Mutual top 10, where they say struck by, HAZCOM, falls. But for a safety professional, it's like, well, what does that do for me? Because am I falling from the same level? What are root causes? What are contributing factors? Like, what are we even talking about when we just start lumping things into outcomes in these broad categories? So I think for us, it's really about changing the entire lens, and hopefully people can really start to get on board with the shared vision that we have. And I think that we've done a pretty good job of it so far, but it's just a continued kind of process. So the next piece that I want to show you guys, and this is something that we're really excited about and something that our clients are really excited about right now, is we need, as a safety industry, to connect the past to the present. It is, bar none, the biggest deal for us, at least right now, and for a lot of our clients, is how do we connect past to the present? And those could be failures, those could be successes, or somewhere in between. But we need to be able to connect the past to the present. So this is the observation form, which safety managers, safety directors, foremen, supervisors, shop foremen, whomever it may be, have access to on a daily basis and are able to go in and measure processes. So I'm just going to do a quick one here, kind of show you how this looks. It's going to look very similar to the risk lab in terms of actions, risks, and mitigators. This top part can kind of be tailored to who you are, what you do, whether it be construction, general industry, a lot of different things. So I'm going to, again, use the angle grinder, and again, use working from scaffold. And one thing that I'll say here is we have a natural processing language built on the backside. And essentially what we're trying to do is find keywords, because there's always language barriers, right? Someone says scaffold, someone says ladders, platforms, whatever it may be, and they're talking about the same thing. Then you put it in a data set, and then it gets completely mixed and moshed. So we have a natural processing language on the backside that allows you to add actions. And for any reason, if I add an action and it's associated to something that already exists in the system, it'll tie in but per your company, it'll just show what your language is, to try to make it as easy as possible for people that are using it and for people to tailor it to them. And again, you'll see the present risk and the possible risk. So I'm going to click on just ICE, and we're going to go through the same process we went through in the risk lab, but trying to take this back a step and think, okay, when is someone doing this? Someone will be doing this in real time. So now fast forward 2 years. Let's say that it's now 2021 and I am somewhere in the world and I am watching someone and they've contacted a competent person, but they are working from ICE on scaffold. They do have a fire extinguisher. The housekeeping isn't up to par. The tool has been inspected. The scaffold's been inspected. There's machine guarding in place. The material isn't secure. They are wearing the proper PPE. They don't have proper body positioning. They removed the combustible materials. They've made the scaffold modifications with competent people. And I'm just going to click through these for sake of conversation here. And so I have all these mitigators in place. So now when I go back into the system, I'm going to get a modal that pops up. So this is for any user across anywhere. So any site, doesn't matter who you are. So let's say that we're a site owner at Marathon and I have 38 different sites across the world. Well, if something happened in Saudi Arabia, the people in the United States that are working on similar things, doing similar things, and they run into the same event scenario should know about it. You know, and that's the whole point, is connecting past to present, no matter where you are, no matter what your experience is. And I think for us, it's something that we've really have been able to make strides with companies with this and this alone, like this interaction with users. I think for us, we went back to the drawing board after doing all the statistics and all the predictive analytics, because there's always people that are going to say, hey, that's snake oil. Hey, I already know that. Hey, that's silly. Hey, that's stupid. And that's all fine. But what you can't do is you can't alert everyone within a 30,000 company or 10 company, whatever it may be, in terms of employees, incidents that occurred 2-3 years ago and what that event scenario looked like matched up to the current observation that we're doing today. And for us, it's something that we really want to connect the past to the present so that we affect the future. And that's really the goal of Nixon as it exists. And when we talk leading indicators, this is what we're betting on. You know, a leading indicator to us means you give someone insight in real time. If you say, hey, we have 70% attendance to safety meetings and it dropped to 50%, that's a leading indicator. Maybe it is, but is it a leading indicator for the guy in the field? Does he gain any insight from it? Does he change anything on the fly? You know, and these are the things that for us, we're really thinking about and really worried about and trying to create. So now I can go in, and again, if I'm any user within the company, I can view the incident. The estimated damages doesn't have to be on there, can be on there. Again, we work with a lot of insurance partners, carriers, brokers, and the one thing that we're really trying to do to create it, to incentivize what we're doing, is to be able to tie work comp policies to it and let people start to really see kind of what's out here for people in terms of granular data. We've worked with a lot of insurance companies, a lot of actuaries, and everyone kind of says the same thing, like, we don't have this information. So if you can collect it and you can give it to us, we have to pay it credence. We're not sure how valuable it is today. And then over a year's time, that changes. And then 2 years' time, that changes again. You know, so we've been working with a lot of trial partners in kind of beta phases on that. And I think that it's something that's really promising. And a lot of the carriers and brokers believe that this is kind of where underwriting is going to go, to really tailor itself outside of NCCI codes or anything else like that. But back to the system, you can see the outcome, you can see the incident in real time. And again, for us, the whole premise of that is to bring people to the past in the present. I think that it's vitally important and something that we constantly are trying to do. So that's kind of the way that we do it. There's a few different, so again, I'll finish my observation here with my corrections, and I could save this And I can say that the event occurs expected, yes or no. If I click no here, I have the ability to say, was there injury or property damage? I highly doubt in real time you're going to watch there be an injury or property damage, but if so, you can click yes, and you can do all the things from there. Did the event occur where with a slight change in timing position, there may have been an injury or property damage? I think this is something that we always talk about. Near misses are super important to us, reporting them super important to us, and we're very realistic that near misses usually get weaponized within a company. If I report 10 near misses, the company themselves doesn't have a predictive model that's learning from what we're doing and trying to make us better and make us understand our events and our processes better. It's basically just going to be like, well, why'd this happen? We're paying you to be here. You shouldn't be having near misses. So we didn't use the word near miss, instead use the definition. Across around 100 companies in 2020, we saw about a 300% increase in near miss reporting because of the definition and throwing out the word. So that's kind of the observation portal and how it connects to the past. I can kind of go through some different things too, but for the general industry folks, I do want to share something that I think will be important to you. You're looking at the US version of Nixon, so everything is going to be OSHA dominated, but I just want to kind of give everyone a taste of what our audit does. So let's just say that we're doing a 1910 general industry audit. The thing about audits that's always bothersome and always it just leads people down usually bad paths is, let's say it's 100 questions. I answered 90 yes and 10 no. That means I got a 90%, which is an A. But if the 10 things I answered no to could lead to death or the building blowing up or something of catastrophic events, well, then what's that audit really worth? So what we did was kind of change the entire kind of scoring system around the audit. So we're showing a risk exposure score, and then we're also showing a penalty score. So if I click, let me just move my zoom. If I click here, so abrasive wheels and equipment grinders. If I'm working in a food processing facility, I can NA everything and I can close out that box. Everything will just go to NAs. But let's say I'm not working at a food processing facility and my bench pedestal grinders aren't permanently mounted. So then I can see the OSHA standard that that's attached to. And if I click no here, I'm going to get an estimated penalty populate from OSHA. So on a weekly basis, we pay people to update this. We're trying to build out an API right now for it. OSHA and any government entity doesn't really like to give out APIs for things. That being said, we're trying to just consistently tie and provide a market barometer, because everyone always has the question, well, what will this cost me? You know, and usually it's not the safety director saying that, or it's not the safety professional. It's the CFO, COO, whatever it may be within a company that's saying, hey, what will this cost me if XYZ regulatory body does come here and does fine us for the deficiencies. So we have the ability to yes it, obviously know it, and be able to see those penalty numbers. It lets people run back of the napkin cost benefit analysis. It's not for me to say that you're going to get a $6,849 fine. No, I don't want to do that for you. I don't want to give you that exact number because honestly, I don't know it. It could be your first time offense. It could be willful. It could be anywhere in between. But again, I think that it's just a really important way of doing audits. And then the other piece to this is, so let's say that I complete an audit at any given time, someone else goes to that same facility, does an audit there as well. If any question is different, the system will cue me and say, hey, on September 9th, Kevin went out to XYZ facility and these 7 questions he answered no to, you just answered yes. Please provide comment on why these have changed. You know, so we're really able to start internally tracking what's changing throughout the audits. And again, just a simple way to keep people connected and let people kind of better understand. And then I think that, am I good on time, Scott, Tamara? Should I let questions? I don't want to run over time. I think that those are the 2 huge things, 3, whatever it may be, that I wanted to get through today. Like I said, I just wanted to give a very high-level primer of what Nixon does. I think that Nixon does even more for directors, COOs, CFOs, CEOs. But I think that what's important, if you want someone to use your tool, is to make it useful to that person. There's been a multitude of questions asked to us. How do you get your own consultants to use Nixon in the field? I said, just make it important, right? I think that that's the biggest thing. And no matter what the software is, make it important. If you consistently just make it an administrative tool that's based completely around compliance, it becomes busy work for people and people don't want to do it. You know, so for us, it's like, I hope that we can be the Apple Watch of safety management. You know, I hope that we can provide people real-time insights in real time, connecting the past to the present. So hopefully they make better decisions for the future. And I will drop the website in the comment box. And if there are questions, I think a few did pop up in here. I'm thinking it might have just been, hey, Kevin, you suck. I don't know. But if it's not, I appreciate it. But yeah, I appreciate everyone's time, and I look forward to anyone that would like to speak further. My phone's always on, anything like that, please feel free to reach out. Like I said, I really appreciate everyone getting on this call. Scott, Tamara, I appreciate you guys as well. I think that this format's unbelievable. We've been around in the industry for about 2 decades now, and the space is fragmented and everything becomes just a price game. And for us, it's like, there has to be more innovation. There has to be consistent change. And you know, you're seeing it across automation and construction tech. There's constant change on the other side. But on the safety side, it's like we're still doing the same things. We're still using the same metrics. And I think that there's the ability to change in there.
Great presentation, Kevin. Thank you. And we did get a question from Doug. I
Sure.
was asking Doug if he wanted to come on mic and ask his question live. Doug,
Yeah.
do you, yeah?
I said yeah, but I mean, I don't know about
okay.
Doug.
I thought you were Doug for a second. Sorry about
No.
that. How did, he asked a question, how did Kevin come up with the 1 to 99 scale? And what criteria did he use for the scoring?
Could be a short answer, could be a long answer. Doug, if you want to contact me offline, I can kind of take you through the entire process. The short version is that we've collected probably 85,000 observations across 120 NCCI codes. We have a consulting firm that we've run for the past 20 years as well. 120 scaling upwards of 150, scaling down to 70, 50, and always somewhere in between. All of our people have used Nixon for the past 4 years, 3 years in beta, 1 year live. And so what we've done is basically bring together Carnegie Mellon data scientists, our industry experts, and we just started building this whole database out. But the risk scale itself, I don't know, we've worked with multiple institutions, Slippery Rock, IUP, University of Central Missouri, Embry-Riddle, Carnegie Mellon, obviously. And we brought these people together and we said, hey, you guys are the ones that created the 5x5 scale. Let's talk about it. Why is it 5x5? Because every time I use a 5x5 scale, I end up between 16 and 20, no matter what it is. I could be using a saw, or I could be on an A-frame ladder, and it will just end up at a 20 if I put enough risks in there, and then it doesn't take into account all of the mitigators. So our scale is constantly moving and dynamic, and just a better precursor for people to make decisions in the field. But like I said, quick answer, and I don't mean to cut you short at all, Doug. I appreciate the question.
And I did, and maybe this was already shared and missed, but the also is if an observation is deemed unsafe, what notifications go out to alert people about that's an unsafe observation to do some correction?
So we have push notifications via text messages, email notifications, And then if you're in the database at that given time, you'll also get a notification to your desktop. So we try to connect people as many ways as possible. Honestly, the biggest thing that we get is like, hey, you got to turn me off these because I'm getting so many notifications on a daily basis, good or bad. So we notify people when things are above average, below average, in the mean, wherever it may be. We're constantly trying to just connect people. I think what ends up happening for EH&S professionals across the world is they feel like they're on islands. They feel like they don't have support, because if I am a safety manager at XYZ grocery store, the director probably isn't there as well. So you kind of feel like you're on this island constantly. And then you kind of feel like you're nagging people if you're like, hey, we have an issue here, 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 here. And we kind of ran into that with COVID is being able to connect people and being able to get people the information they need when they need it in a granular fashion, where they don't have to ask like, well, what was actually happening? Because all it said was not safe. It's kind of our thought process.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Scott, how are we on time?
Yeah, we're right on time. So that was perfect. I was going to comment too. I think it is amazing that you're bringing all this data, you know, from across all these companies and industries and making it accessible for everyone. I don't think there's any other, you know, solution out there right now that's doing that. You need I think to pay a small fortune for membership in some exclusive club to get access to that kind of data. So that's commendable. I love the democratization of safety, and that's what kind of what we're all about at Safepedia as well. So thanks so much, Kevin. We'll make sure, I forgot to mention, I think we dropped it in the chat, but we'll make sure to circulate Kevin's contact information. And if you have any more questions, by all means, reach out. And again, we'll have a Q&A at the end of the next 3 sessions here, so that if something pops in your head, hopefully Kevin will hang around and we can get those questions answered for you as well. So